Tonight, we're talking about the legacy of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. on the eve of the 50th anniversary of his assassination in Memphis. Joining me now is Congressman Cedric Richmond, a Louisiana Democrat who chairs the Congressional Black Caucus, and Congressman Keith Ellison, a Democrat from Minnesota, who's deputy chair of the Democratic National Committee. I'm so glad to have both of you on. Thank you so much for joining me this evening. Representative Richmond,
thank you, Don.
We heard Jesse Jackson say that Martin Luther King Jr.'s spirit is alive. Do you see it? Do you feel it energizing the civil rights struggles of today?
Absolutely. First of all, Don, you would not be where you are, and certainly Keith and I would not be where we are, but for him, but for his dream, and but for his legacy. And every time we see people come together, whether it's Black Lives Matter, whether it's the young people in their protest of gun violence and the plethora of guns on the streets, whether it's Colin Kaepernick taking a knee during the national anthem, that's King. And it's just in different forms, but it's people coming together to stand up to make this country a more perfect union. And in King's last speech, he talked about the fact that we had an obligation and a duty to protest to make this country a better country.
Yeah, I'm going to talk more about Black Lives Matter and where you guys think the civil rights movement is going. But I want to bring you in, Representative Ellison. When you think about the state of politics right now, particularly around the issues important to minorities, are we losing ground in the fight for equality and justice, or gaining ground?
Well, you know, we definitely have our challenges. If you compare 1968 till now, there's about 60% more people who are under the federal guidelines for poverty. The minimum wage, if you adjust for inflation from 1968, would be almost $12 an hour. The federal minimum wage is $7.25. CEO pay, the workers in 1968 got about 20, well, CEOs got about 20 times more than the average worker, but yet today it's somewhere around 300 to 1. And so economically speaking, the fight that Martin Luther King was waging on behalf of poor and working class people, we can't deny that we have slipped. At the same time, we have made important strides on racial justice. You know, we did pass the 1965 Voting Rights Act, yet the Supreme Court tried to gut it. But, you know, folks are running for office every day. We're fighting every day. We're making important political progress. But we have got to take a lesson from Martin Luther King about economic empowerment
right,
and fighting against poverty.
Yeah. That's the important part. And building wealth, really, I think, is one of the most important issues that we have to face, especially as a people. I do want to talk specifically about today, though, Congressman Richmond, because, and both of you are leaders in the Congressional Black Caucus, but in Congress, run by Republicans, with a president who even members of his own party say is insensitive to minorities, do you have a voice right now?
Well, we do have a voice. And if you look at the spending bill that we just passed, we did some remarkable work, whether it was the $600 million that we added for Head Start to make sure that children in poverty have a chance to succeed through education and through opportunity, as well as the money for HBCUs and other things. We did a phenomenal job in fighting for and funding things that are important to help people who are on the bottom move up. And that's what the struggle and the fight is about, regardless of the president, his insensitivity, as Republicans would like to call it. I think it's more calculated. But we're still fighting. We have 48 members. We represent 78 million Americans, and only 17 million of those are African American. But Dr. King's dream and his fight was not just for African Americans. It was to make sure that you had true economic justice, as well as making sure that we end discrimination and all of those things. So his fight is still a real fight. We still have an awful long way to go to make sure that this country is a better country. And Keith mentioned it. When you look at CEO pay and you look at the average wage that people make, we know there's a problem. We're a great country. People can make as much as they want, but we do have an obligation that people who wake up and go to work hard and work hard for 40 hours a week, they should be able to sustain a family, and that is just not the case today.
They shouldn't be living paycheck to paycheck. Representative Ellison, you know, the president's message to African Americans, remember on the campaign trail, you live in poverty, your schools are no good.
What do we have to lose, huh?
You have no, what do you have to lose? I mean, he calls Mexicans rapists. He made many racist and incendiary comments about Muslims. President Trump has the biggest microphone in the world. How do you fight that message?
Every day we put our time in. We organize all across this country. Black Lives Matter, the Parkland students. We have the DACA students, young people standing up for immigration justice. We add all of our collective voices together, because as much as we honor Martin Luther King, and we should and we do, Martin Luther King stands for the movement. He stands for all of the people who were pushed down by segregation, all the folks who worked hard every day. The woman who said, "My feet is tired, but my soul is rest," because she was protesting the Montgomery bus boycott. He represents her. We have to be movement-oriented people, and that's why, Cedric is leading the Black Caucus. He's going to black college campuses all the time. I'm going around the country. We're talking to masses of people, rising them up, making them understand that their power really is in our collective action. Just like those teachers in West Virginia, Kentucky, the power of us together is more than Trump. And if we do it, we can get it done.
Both of you have mentioned Black Lives Matter in our conversation, them demonstrating, demanding change. Is this what civil rights movement, is this what it looks like today? Is it effective?
Well, I would say yes, and we have to remember that Dr. King started when he was 17, a student at Morehouse. He wrote his first letter to the editor to the Atlanta Constitution saying that blacks should have equal opportunity and equal rights as every American. So the thing I get out of it is that he started his activism at such a young age. So when we look at Black Lives Matter, the Parkland students, and others, I think it highlights exactly what his life was about. And when you talk about the president is the biggest voice in the nation. However, he's not the only voice. And the fact is that when people come together in a collective voice and fight together, that's how we win. And I'll just take another part of Dr. King's last speech. He said that when Pharaoh wanted to continue slavery in Egypt, what he tried to do is get the slaves fighting each other. But when the slaves would band together, it's when they would make their biggest gains against Pharaoh. So we just have to remember, as a people, as a country, no matter who the president is, no matter the rhetoric coming out of his mouth, no matter the hate coming out of his heart, it doesn't matter. If we band together, we will overcome it, and we will create the country we want it to be, not the country that he wants it to be.
Yeah. Listen, sadly,
Cedric is absolutely right.
Yeah.
I mean, resistance is, our unity and our coming together is resistance. Solidarity is resistance. We've got to come together and understand that when we unite, that is a powerful statement about the country we envision.
I want to get this in real quickly before we run out of time. I think it's an important question because, you have there are some very good people on both sides, right? Remember the president said that, and we had people marching through the street with tiki torches in 2017. 50 years, and if you can give me a quick answer, I know it deserves more, but I'm sorry about that. 50 years since the assassination of Dr. King. Are you more frustrated or are you hopeful about where we're going? First, Congressman Ellison.
I am incredibly hopeful. I believe that if the young folks and not so young folks, the teachers in West Virginia, people all over the country continue to march, the bright days ahead for the United States. But we got to stick together, and we got to stay hopeful, optimistic, and keep fighting back.
Representative Richmond?
I'm absolutely more hopeful. And I think that the last thing that we need to focus on is those of us who have made it. We have an obligation to reach back. Dr. King was middle class. He died fighting for sanitation workers. That's what we need to remember every day, especially as African Americans. Even though we've made it, we still have an obligation to reach back and lift people up.
I appreciate it, both of you. I appreciate the conversation, and thank you for fighting every day. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Don.
Thank you, Don.
That's it for us tonight.
Thanks
for watching. I'll see you right back here tomorrow.